I want you to be completely honest with yourself for just a second here.
Always a dangerous game, but yeah, let's do it.
Right. So how often does like a random, like on a post from a total stranger, absolutely make your entire day? Or on the flip side, how often does giving a perfectly polite no to a coworker fill you with this just crushing, overwhelming guilt?
Oh man, we have all been caught in that exact emotional tug of war. I mean, it is incredibly common, but the reasons behind it are actually wild when you start pulling the thread.
They really are. And that is exactly what we're getting into for today's deep dive. We've got this fascinating stack of research exploring the modern struggles of, mental space and personal boundaries.
Yeah, it's basically the blueprint for reclaiming your attention and your agency in a world that is just constantly demanding both.
Exactly, because when you look at all the sources we have today, there is this massive glaring tension. It's the tension between seeking external approval and, well, trying to build actual internal confidence.
It is the defining tightrope walk of modern life, really. We're essentially navigating this daily collision between our ancient neurological wiring and a very modern world.
Right. A world that demands constant attention and compliance.
Exactly. And to figure out how to fix it, we really have to look at the mechanics of why we seek that external validation in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the most obvious place this collision happens is right in our pockets.
Yeah.
The digital drain. I'm talking about our phones.
Oh, absolutely. The ultimate drain.
Yeah, I mean, the data shows we check these things hundreds of times a day.
Mm?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And it is definitely not because we just happen to be incredibly interested in what time it is.
Not at all. When you dig into the psychology of what we're doing during those hundreds of checks, you realize we're caught in a very specific behavioral loop.
Like a slot machine.
Yeah, exactly like a slot machine. We are just constantly comparing our own behind-the-scenes reality with everyone else's highly curated highlight reels.
That concept of the highlight reel, it just explains so much.
Yeah.
Because, nobody is posting a photo of their burnt toast.
Right, or the awkward argument they just had in the grocery store parking lot.
Exactly. Or the massive mountain of laundry on their chair. They post the vacation sunset. They post the promotion. And we sit on our couches on a perfectly normal, mundane Tuesday evening, look at that and think, well, I am fundamentally failing at life.
And here is the real why behind that terrible feeling. Human brains did not evolve to process the highlight reels of billions of people.
We just aren't wired for it.
No, evolutionarily speaking, we grew up in small tribes of, maybe 150 people. In that tribal environment, comparing yourself to others was actually a survival mechanism.
Just if you didn't fit in, you were in trouble.
Huge trouble. If you were at the bottom of the social hierarchy, you might get less food, or worse, get kicked out of the tribe entirely. And back then, exile literally meant death.
Okay, wait. So when I'm looking at Instagram and feeling bad about my messy apartment, my brain is literally interpreting that as a survival threat.
Exactly. Your nervous system is screaming, I am falling behind the tribe, my status is dropping, I am in imminent danger.
Wow. That is intense.
It is. Now, multiply that by the fact that you aren't comparing yourself to 150 local people anymore. You are comparing yourself to the top 0.1% of the entire globe.
The most beautiful, wealthy people on Earth.
Right. So your brain's threat detection system just goes into absolute overdrive.
Wow. Okay, so that perfectly explains the craving for validation. I mean, if my brain thinks I'm facing literal tribal exile, of course a random comment or a like from a stranger is going to dictate my mood for the entire day.
Yeah, it's a digital signal that you're still accepted by the tribe.
Right.
It's this microdose of dopamine that temporarily soothes that deep evolutionary anxiety.
But it's temporary, right? So you have to keep going back.
Always. Because it's so fleeting, you end up constantly scanning your digital environment for proof that you matter. You do this because you haven't built the internal infrastructure to validate yourself.
It's as like outsourcing your psychological security system to an algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, to put it another way, it's like walking up to a total stranger on the street, handing them the remote control to your emotions and saying, here, you decide if I get to be happy today based on whether you tap a little heart icon.
It is exactly like that. You just completely surrender your agency.
But practically speaking, how do you actually stop doing this? Because the research strongly suggests social media fasting, taking breaks from the screen. But just throwing my phone in the river isn't a realistic option for most of us.
No, we need them for work and life, obviously. But the goal in a social media fast isn't to become some digital hermit. It's really about recalibrating your nervous system.
So like a reset button.
Exactly. When you step away from the curated feeds for a set period, you deprive the brain of those cheap dopamine spikes. And at first, yeah, it feels like withdrawal. You're twitchy.
Oh, I know that feeling. Reaching for a phone that isn't there.
Right. But then a fundamental shift happens. You force your brain to return to a real-world baseline.
You stop scrolling, and you start living in the unedited version of reality.
Right. You start to realize that the mundane Tuesday isn't a failure. It is just normal human existence. By actively deciding when to engage with your phone, you're taking that remote control back.
Right, instead of just reflexively checking it out of anxiety.
Exactly. You start generating self-worth based on your actual physical actions and real relationships, not just digital breadcrumbs.
But here's where the plot thickens a bit. Because the nervous system doesn't really know the difference between a digital like and a physical nod of approval, does it?
No, it really doesn't.
The research makes it pretty clear that we can put the phone down, but that desperate need for external validation just bleeds directly into our physical, real-world relationships.
It does. It just puts on a new disguise. We move from the digital highlight reel to the offline highlight reel, which usually manifests as the classic trap of people-pleasing.
Oh, people-pleasing. The wonderful habit of saying yes to everyone else, which usually just means saying no to yourself.
Oh, yeah. You agree to take on a project you absolutely don't have time for.
Or you agree to go to an event when you are just running on totally empty.
And again, we have to look at the underlying mechanism here. Why do we do this to ourselves? It goes right back to that primal fear of rejection we were just talking about.
The tribe again.
Yes, we equate compliance with value. We subconsciously believe that if we aren't constantly useful to the people around us, they will abandon us.
Hold on, though. I genuinely struggle with this one. Because if a coworker comes to me, they are drowning in work, and they ask for my help, saying no just feels incredibly selfish.
It feels wrong, doesn't it?
It really does. Aren't we supposed to be team players? Isn't being helpful just an inherently good thing?
That is the exact trap, and it is why this behavior is so incredibly hard to break. Society actively rewards compliance. But we have to clarify the critical psychological difference between genuine helpfulness and fear-based people-pleasing.
Because they look the same on the outside.
Exactly. They look identical, but internally the mechanics are completely opposite.
Okay, break that down for me. How do I know which one I'm doing?
Well, genuine helpfulness comes from a place of surplus. You have the time, you have the energy, and you make a conscious choice to assist because it aligns with your values.
Okay, and people-pleasing.
People-pleasing comes from a place of deficit. You don't have the time, your energy is completely depleted, and honestly, you don't actually want to do the task. But you say yes anyway because you are terrified of the friction that a no might cause.
Wow. It's like running your mental economy on credit.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it, running your mental economy on credit.
Yeah, you're spending energy you literally do not possess to buy approval you don't actually need.
Exactly. And just like financial credit, eventually the debt collectors show up.
Oh, they always do.
Right. And in this case, the debt collectors are burnout, chronic fatigue, and this deep, lingering resentment toward the very people you are supposedly helping.
And the irony that the research points out is just brutal here. We twist ourselves into knots, trying to be everything to everyone out of this fear of losing their respect.
Yeah, but being a chronic people pleaser often costs you their genuine respect anyway.
Wait, really? Why is that?
Because people are highly attuned to authenticity. On an unconscious level, your coworkers, your friends, they can sense when you don't respect your own time.
They can smell the desperation.
Kind of, yeah. They can sense the anxiety driving the yes. If your yes is just an automatic reflex triggered by a fear of conflict, it holds very little actual value.
It's just a default setting.
Exactly. Whereas establishing a boundary, learning to give a polite, firm no, actually signals high internal value.
Because it shows you actually value yourself.
Yes. It shows that you possess a strong internal compass and that your time is a finite, valuable resource. When you say no to a request you can't handle, the paradox is that it makes your yes infinitely more meaningful when you finally do give it.
So a polite no is actually a demonstration of the internal confidence we are trying to build. It's like taking that offline remote control back.
Precisely. You are deciding your own capacity instead of letting someone else's emergency dictate your schedule.
It shifts your relationships from being purely transactional, where you just trade favors for safety, to being grounded in actual mutual respect.
Exactly. It's a fundamental shift in how you relate to the world.
Okay, so there is a really clear logical through line here. We start by putting down the phone, to block the digital demands for validation, essentially recalibrating the nervous system.
Right, step one.
Then we learn the mechanics of a polite no to block unreasonable real-world demands, moving from a deficit economy to a surplus economy. But what about the demands that aren't happening right now?
You mean the internal demands?
Exactly. Because if setting boundaries is about saying no to current external pressures, how do we stop trying to please the ghosts of our past?
Oh, that is the big one.
Right, the situations that are already over, but they still live rent-free in our heads.
This is perhaps the most difficult boundary of all to set. The research transitions heavily here into the psychology of rumination and the art of letting go.
Okay.
Because your brain's threat detection system, the same one freaking out over Instagram and coworker requests, it doesn't strictly differentiate between a present threat and a remembered threat.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how we typically deal with our past mistakes, or embarrassing moments, or toxic relationships that ended years ago.
We don't just let them go.
No, it's not like we just file them away. We treat them like we're paying rent for ghost tenants in our mental real estate. We let these past events occupy prime space in our minds.
You really do.
And we constantly check in on them, replay them, and feel the exact same physiological stress we felt when they originally happened. Why do our brains torture us like this?
Well, it is a fascinating cognitive glitch. Our brains are essentially prediction machines. They want to keep us safe by analyzing past failures so we can avoid them in the future.
Okay, makes sense in theory.
Right, so when you are lying in bed at 2 a.m., suddenly agonizing over a dumb comment you made in a meeting 3 years ago, your brain is actually trying to solve a problem?
Even though the meeting is long gone.
Yes. It thinks that if it replays the scenario enough times, it can figure out the right answer and protect you from future tribal rejection.
So the brain is trying to be helpful, but it's just spinning its wheels in the mud. It's trying to solve a puzzle that has already been thrown away.
Exactly. And the problem is we often attach our sense of responsibility to that rumination. We feel like if we just let it go, we are somehow failing.
Oh, totally.
We think that holding on to the guilt or the anger means we are holding ourselves accountable.
Right. Like, if I let go of this past mistake, it means I'm letting myself off the hook. Or if I let go of the anger towards someone who wronged me, it means they won. We frame letting go as a form of surrender or like weakness.
But the psychological data reframes this entirely. Letting go has absolutely nothing to do with weakness or losing. It is an active, structural decision.
So it's not just giving up.
Not at all. The texts actually describe moving on as a superpower, and when you look at the mechanics of it, you see why. Letting go is the ultimate act of self-respect. It is the eviction of those ghost tenants.
I love that. A superpower. You aren't giving up, you are actively reclaiming the property.
Yes. Because mental bandwidth is a finite resource. You cannot build genuine internal confidence if your foundation is cluttered with the wreckage of external approvals and rejections from 5 years ago.
You just don't have the space.
You literally do not have the cognitive space to focus on your present growth if your brain is dedicating 30% of its processing power to a relationship that ended in 2021.
Wow. So it requires active management. You can't just passively hope that time will heal it or that the past will magically stop bothering you.
No, you have to consciously interrupt the rumination loop. When the brain brings up the old mistake to solve it, you have to intentionally apply that internal boundary.
You have to shut it down.
Yes, you have to say, there is no new information to be gained here. We are closing this file. It takes practice, obviously, but it is a protective measure against your own biology's tendency to self-sabotage.
It is essentially setting a boundary with yourself.
Precisely, which really synthesizes the entire journey we've been on today.
It really does. I mean, let's trace this whole blueprint back. We've gone from the macro down to the micro. We started by looking at the phone in our hands.
The digital slot machine.
Right. We broke down the evolutionary psychology of the highlight reel and realized that seeking validation from strangers is basically our ancient brain panicking about tribal exile.
And we saw how stepping away from that screen deprives the brain of cheap dopamine and forces a much-needed return to real-world baselines.
Then we carried that awareness into the physical world. We looked at the mechanics of people-pleasing, recognizing the massive difference between operating from a surplus of genuine helpfulness versus a deficit of fear.
Right. We realized that running your mental economy on credit just leads to burnout, and that a polite no is actually what earns genuine lasting respect.
And finally, we turned that boundary setting inward. We looked at the cognitive glitch of rumination and learned that holding on to past mistakes isn't accountability, it is just poor management of your mental real estate.
Letting go isn't failing, it is the active superpower of clearing space for your future.
It really is a complete structural blueprint for taking back your attention and your agency in a really noisy world. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, we want to leave you with something to really chew on.
Yeah, think about all that mental bandwidth we have been talking about. All that room currently occupied by the fear of missing out digitally, by the exhausting habit of saying yes when you are running on empty, and by the heavy ghosts of past mistakes.
It's a lot of space.
It is. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If you successfully evicted all of those things, if you cleared out all the mental real estate currently taken up by strangers' opinions and the unchangeable past, what exactly would you choose to build in that newly empty, quiet space?
That is the real question. Once you clear the land, what do you construct? Thank you so much for sharing your sources with us and for joining the conversation today.
Always a pleasure.
Remember, true confidence doesn't come from a notification, and it doesn't come from twisting yourself into knots to please everyone around you. It is a structure you build from the inside out. Stop handing out the remote control to your nervous system and start deciding the channel for yourself.